Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're going to be making salmon patties. This is a very old recipe and nobody knows exactly how old fish cakes are, but this version of this recipe became popular during the U.S. Civil War. You need a 14.5 ounce can of canned salmon. Double Q is the brand that my aunts and my granny and my mom always used. But I saw this Star Kiss in the grocery store the other day and I thought, well, maybe it has fewer bones and skin in it, because you do have to take the bones and the skin out of it. But it doesn't. I did read online that Double Q has a version now that is in a 12 ounce can that doesn't have any bones in it. So I'll look for that and see if I can find it. I couldn't find it in the local grocery stores here though. Anyway, you need 1 can of canned salmon. Whatever brand you get, make sure you get the stuff that only has the fish and the salt in it. This version has crackers in it, just regular old saltine crackers. And you're going to need anywhere from 5 to 10 crackers. You want to get this dry enough to form patties out of it. If you need a gluten-free version, you can use about half a cup of cornmeal. You could also use half a cup of flour in this if you wanted to, instead of the crackers. But if you're using the crackers, you're not going to use this. You want 1 egg in it. That is kind of one of the basics. And you want about 1/4 cup of finely chopped onions. If you're measuring them, I just chopped up about half of a medium onion, and you can see it's quite a bit more than 1/4 cup, but I'm going to use it. You can add, get rid of that can. You can add all kinds of stuff into these. Bell peppers is one of my favorite add-ins, and I'm definitely going to be adding in about 1/4 cup of finely chopped bell peppers. And I like a little bit of pepper in mine. You can add lemon, you can add Worcestershire sauce, you can add all kinds of different spices to it. Anything, any kind of seasoning that you would put in fish, you can add in these. But anyway, you want to flake your salmon up after you've gotten the bones out and the skin off, all the while you're taking them out. We'll break it up a little more as we add other ingredients. Give your egg a little beat. Go ahead and dump in your onions. You definitely don't want to add any salt to this recipe because the salmon has a lot of salt in it already. And then of course if you're using saltines, it's going to have more salt in it. And I'm going to add my peppers. Crush up some of these crackers. You don't need to use anything special. Just crush these crackers up in your hand. You don't even need a bag or anything for them. That looks pretty good. I think we can make patties out of that. If we add any more crackers, it's going to be too dry. So let's take this over to the stove. Now you're going to have some kind of fat to fry these in, and I've got butter in here. You can use anything you want literally to fry them in. I like the flavor that butter gives the fish, and that's what all the women in my family used to cook it in, usually was butter. You want to preheat your pan, get it pretty warm, turn it on about medium. And we are going to use our hands to kind of squish this into patties. You don't want to just throw it in the pan. You want to actually make patties out of it. Oops, and I didn't get that one squished together good enough. You can see there it fell apart. You definitely want to make sure you drain your salmon. I'm not sure I mentioned that at the beginning of the video. If you don't drain the water off of it before you start this, your patties will be way too wet. You won't be able to form the salmon into patties at all. In the fried squash video, I said that if you let your squash sit for just a minute after you've breaded them, then they come out better. Well, the same thing is true for these. If you squish them out and sit them on a plate, they will stick together a little bit better, and they'll be a little bit prettier when you fry them up. Because I'm videoing and I've got all the cameras rolling, I don't always have time to do that when I'm videoing. But if you'll squish these all out and sit them on a plate, they'll come out a little prettier. Just give them a few minutes before you put them in a pan. That kind of lets the eggs set up a little bit, and they fry better. But you're just going to fry these until they're good and brown on both sides. And we're going to flip them over in maybe 7 minutes or so. And you don't need to worry about cooking it until the fish is done, because the fish is already cooked. So you're not going to end up with like raw fish or anything. That's not a problem with this recipe. You're just trying to brown it. This is one of those recipes that really brings back childhood memories for me. I grew up with extended family all around. We lived really close to my mom's family. My granny and pa and all her sisters and brothers, and I had cousins around everywhere. And my Aunt Dot, she lived with my granny and pa, and I spent more time there than I did at home. And she would cook these for, gosh, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 of us when she'd make them. So she'd use a few cans of salmon. But all the kids would sit there at the table, and we'd sit around waiting on her to get them fried and fight over who was going to get the next one out of the pan. I said in another video I didn't know how to survive childhood because I was a picky eater in the days before you could get away with being a picky eater. I mean, kids just weren't catered to when I was growing up the way that they are now. But I don't know how to survive childhood because I was just a little bit of a brat. I remember aggravating my Aunt Dot, and why I picked on her, I don't know. But she would stand in the kitchen and cook for us literally for hours. And I'd aggravate her till she threw something at me and ran me out of the kitchen. And I am so thankful that I grew up in a time where there weren't cell phones, because nowadays everybody has a cell phone and they can capture every minute on video camera. You can't do anything anymore and get away with it without it being videoed. So keep that in mind. If you're around people, anything you do might be being videoed. Even if you're not around people, people hide cameras everywhere now. So stuff that you don't want to get out is getting out. And I'm glad there's not video of me when I was a kid. One of the things I would do to aggravate my Aunt Dot, and I would do it for an hour or two, is I would imitate Fred Sanford from Red Fox's thing he would do in Sanford and Son, where he put his hand on his chest and he was having a heart attack and going to meet Elizabeth. Now, I know some of y'all are old enough to remember that, and if you're not, find you some old episodes of Sanford and Son on the internet. When I was growing up, Fred Fox was one of my favorite actors. I never missed an episode of Sanford and Son on that little bitty 12-inch black and white TV that my granny had in her living room. You can imagine about 12 kids on Saturday morning gathered around a 12-inch TV watching cartoons too. Okay, I think these are probably about ready to flip now. You want to get your salmon patties good and brown like this. That's about it, the perfect color right there. And that one that I didn't squeeze good and tight, it did break. But like I said, if you mash these out and then give them a minute before you put them in the pan, just 5 minutes or so. You don't want to wait too long because it is fish and you've got it sitting out. But give them at least 5 minutes for that egg to kind of start binding together. They won't be as likely to break. This one here that even just was in the bowl for a minute longer came out much better. It was the last one that I put in there. The second side is going to cook a little bit faster than the first side did, partly because the pan is already hot and partly because your salmon patty is already hot. So it's just going to brown a little bit faster than the first side did. So keep that in mind. I think the first side took about 7 minutes, the second side about 5 minutes. And you just want to get it nice and brown. You don't really need to worry about draining these, especially if you cooked them in butter, because the butter is going to add flavor to it. You just put them on a plate and serve them hot. You can serve them with all kinds of stuff. Cocktail sauce, tartar sauce, just all sorts of different things. Anything, like I said, that would go on fish. You could squeeze fresh lemon on them. When I was a kid, we ate them with plain ketchup. We would all just squirt out ketchup and dip our salmon patties in ketchup. But that's up to you. Whatever you like, anything you like on fish will go with these. You do want to add more butter because they'll soak up the butter or whatever kind of fat you're cooking them in before you put the rest of your salmon patties in the pan. And you just keep repeating this until you have fried up all of your salmon. Make the patties and add them to the pan. You're going to get about 6 to 8 salmon patties out of a can of salmon. If I hadn't put the peppers in there and I'd only used a 1/4 cup of onion, I probably would have only gotten 6. I ended up with 7. Anything you add to it, of course, is going to make more patties. But usually about 6 per can of salmon. Now, here's a little tip. If you are frying this indoors, you probably have central heat and air. That's another one of the luxuries that we have today that I grew up without. If you have central heat and air, if you are frying fish, change your filter as soon as you finish, and it'll help get that smell out of your house. Otherwise, you're going to be smelling it for days, even weeks, until you get that filter changed. And it won't take all the smell out of the house, but changing the filter will help take the fish smell out of your house. You can fix all kinds of sides to go with these. You can do French fries. You can do hush puppies, coleslaw, anything that would go with fish. When we were kids and my Aunt Dot would make them, she would also make us potato pancakes. And we loved salmon patty and potato pancake day. We would all eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. I don't know how in the world she'd stood there and cooked long enough to fry that many salmon patties and that many potato pancakes. She would literally fry for about an hour and a half or 2 hours straight, feeding all of us. So I guess that's how I kept from starving to death. The Lord blessed me with some wonderful family members, really sweet aunts. They didn't kill me for aggravating them, and they would stand for hours and cook for me. But we really appreciate you joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. This is one of those good old recipes that if you grew up anywhere in the South, maybe even anywhere in America, you probably had this as a child if you were my age or older. Don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave us. And until next time, remember to put God first.